Hi, everybody. This is another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted. And today I have a very special guest, Alyssa Berthiaume.
Very close.
What? Tell me.
Berthiaume.
Berthiaume. I should have checked that beforehand, but we're just going to wing it here because we're going to have fun. So I'm going to read Alyssa's bio and then we're going to dive right in because there's a lot that I want to ask her and that she has to say. So Alyssa is a writer, recovering middle child, wannabe superhero, mom, and author of Dear Universe, I Get It Now. She describes herself as a ghostwriter, guide, and girlfriend with a mission. She has an M.F.A. in creative writing, nonfiction. She's a graduate student, has a graduate certificate in women's studies and English composition, a BA in creative writing and psychology. Oh my gosh. So, and to that I'll say, welcome Alyssa, and holy smokes, Batman. It's like you're an overachiever.
I am.
So I just want to welcome you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I love the part where it says unscripted after Winning Proof, because that is so me to a T. Like, not going to probably prepare anything. I'm just going to shoot from the hip. So
that's what we do. That's what we do here.
Totally works for me. And yes, I am definitely an overachiever. Yeah, for sure. I have a whole chapter about it actually in my book.
Oh, you do? Okay. Now, do you think that's from being a middle child? Because usually firstborn are really driven and all that.
Yeah. You know, I would say that my sister was also, my older sister was also an overachiever. I think it was something that was modeled to us, in all honesty. My dad was an extremely successful businessman. He was also very involved in the community and our church community. And my mom also, she worked a full-time job. Also involved in a lot of either Boosters Club, or she was like an advisor sometimes to our classes, class events, also involved in the church community. So, we really grew up seeing our parents wear a ton of hats and, go after formal education when, siblings, not all of their siblings necessarily did. Grandparents didn't have college educations. So I think we were we were nurtured in a particular way, to do a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool to have it modeled for you. And it's just a natural progression in the family genealogy.
It sure is. I think it's just, pretty soon it's just going to be generations of overachievers. It'll be like a special chromosome that we've got in us.
Absolutely. So I want to start out by talking about your writing adventures. You said you wrote, and this is on your website, you wrote your first memoir at 5 years old, but it started even earlier than that. Tell us about that story.
Yeah. So I would say probably around 5. I was in kindergarten and we had these black and white composition notebooks. I actually still have it. Black and white composition notebook. And that's what we learned to write our first sentences in. My spelling was atrocious. I barely knew the alphabet. My drawings were basically like really creepy stick figures. But all of these stories inside this notebook that we were to keep was really just a way to practice our letters and our penmanship. But I was always writing about stuff that was based on reality. It was always based on the people in my life or a pet in my life or something else that I had read or seen. And then by the time I was 11, I got the idea that I was going to actually write a piece of nonfiction, which pretty much was memoir. And it was based off of the people who lived in my circle. I lived on a court growing up. So there was very few houses and we all knew each other. And I was obsessed at the time with Little House on the Prairie and also Anne of Green Gables. And both of those stories, right, have these young women who want to be budding writers. And the message to both of them at various points along their journey is that they should write what's in their heart. They should write what they know about, right? And I was like, well, I'm going to be like Laura and Anne, and I'm going to write about what I know about, right? Which is really nothing because I'm 11. So what I knew to write about was like, my next door neighbor's name is X and they have a pool and they have birds at their bird feeder. It was a terrible memoir. It was not very exciting at all, but nevertheless, I printed it. I bound it in one of those folders with like the gold fastener thingies through the middle. And I made a copy for every single person who gave me permission to put them in my book. And then lo and behold, there was a spelling error on the cover that nobody told me about for years.
Oh my gosh.
For years. And so then in my 20s, when I discovered that some of these neighbors were still keeping this thing, they hadn't put it in the recycling bin, gotten rid of it, like they still kept it. That was when I found out that there had been a spelling error on it the entire time. And I was like, this will be the thing that if I ever become famous and well-known, I'll die. And like my legacy will be this first memoir when I was 11 with the spelling error on the cover.
I absolutely love it. And anybody who knows me knows I am a Little House on the Prairie and the Waltons and Anne of Green Gables aficionado. I love those shows. And there's so many life lessons from Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, all 9 seasons of Little House on the Prairie. And I never got into the Waltons except lately. And I'm learning that was rich in lessons as well. And John Boy was a writer. I mean, Earl Hamner was writing his life story, and that's what the series is. So I totally resonate with that. And I love it. And you know what? The spelling error is your legacy. That's why that keeps you humble.
It does. I do believe when I discovered it, I gave my parents a pretty hard time. Like, did you not notice? Did you feel like you were going to crush my dreams? Like, why didn't you say something about this title? But it makes for a really great story now.
It is a really good story, seeing that you are a ghostwriter and all that, Yeah. So you say on your website, and I love this quote, "My magic plus my superpowers equals your story bravely and authentically told." So how does that play out when you're ghostwriting a book for someone else?
Yeah. So part of my magic, I would say, is what I call hearing between the lines. So we hear a lot of people say, well, you can read between the lines, meaning that the things that aren't said are the things that you're intuiting. And for me, when I'm working with clients, whether I'm coaching or ghostwriting, really, they're sharing a lot. They're doing what I would call a verbal dumping of information. And they talk themselves into a tizzy or into a circle, and then they get done and they take a deep breath and they go, did that make any sense? And they're looking at me like, sorry, I don't even know where that all came from. I just said everything that I possibly could, and I have this ability, I think because I'm such a strong active listener, and I think that comes from my psychology background, that I can consume all of this information and then I can go, so what you're saying is, and then like hit it right on the head. And they'll be like, really, I said that? That's amazing. That's exactly what I meant, but what took them 20 minutes to circle around, right, and provide all this extraneous detail on, I can kind of get to the heart of it and say, this is what I'm hearing. Does this sound accurate? Right. And usually it is. I'm touching on something that feels very authentic to them. So that's a part of the magic, which is really helpful, because what people need to realize when they're writing any kind of book is that there's usually like one central thing that book is attempting to say. It might take you 12 chapters to say it. It might take you 22, but like you could really, when you try hard enough and you're focused enough and you're clear enough on your idea, drill your book down to one main thing that your book is actually about, and everything else supports that one main thing. So if I can early on in the process get to the point where I'm saying, okay, you've given me all these life stories and experiences, I think what this is really saying is X, then we've done like most of the work, because most of the work is refining what you're actually meaning to share, and not just have it be a long laundry list of all the things that have ever happened to you, right? That doesn't make for a very good book. So that's kind of the magic. And my superpower is really in organization. and also in rewriting, like revising. So because I have this organizational mind and the strategic mind, once I've got the moving parts and pieces, I can say, oh, this is how they go. And like, I can build out the order of things when they're like, they wouldn't even be able to get going, right? And understand how it all fits together. So I can put the pieces in order and say, how does this look in terms of flow? And they'll go, awesome. Like I couldn't have even managed my way through there, because they're overwhelmed with the content. And then on the other side, like I'm also get it all down, dump it onto the page first, and we revise later. So I hate the first draft. The first draft is not my friend. It's like all this effort to get every single word in place and all of the pieces. But what I've learned over time is that when I push through and I just do a mad dash to get as much as I can in place, I am a fierce reviser once there are words already on the page. Then I can go and I can look and I say, oh, I don't know why I started there. That should be down here. This should be the intro. We're missing a bunch of information here. We need some backstory. We need some emotion. What did they say? Let's bring in some sensory detail. But for me, I can't get there until I get like all of this kind of like what I would say the skeleton of the book kind of onto the blank page.
Yeah. And that makes sense because I've heard it say another industry ghostwriter that I've taken a class from. He calls it a Franken-draft. The first draft is a Franken-draft because it looks like Frankenstein on paper. It has cracks and it's ugly and it just seems disjointed and it has screws in its neck. And then, and then you work it and, it ends up being a work of art at the end when you combine your magic and your superpowers.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you write in someone else's voice? What is one trick you use to do that? Because even though I'm not ghostwriting anymore, thank God. And I appreciate your craft immensely. A big concern of people were, how is it going to sound like me? Is it going to sound like I'm talking? And so what's one of your tricks for doing that, for climbing into somebody else's brain?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to sound cheesy probably, but I would say listen and study. Like that's how I would kind of drill it down. Right. So, it's not just listening for content. It's not just listening for, the year that something happened or the order in something happened or, the car was red. It's listening like, do they tend to be digressive? Like they start in some place and then all of a sudden they take you way over here, right? So are they digressive? Do they use certain words and phrases repeatedly? Their catchphrases, things that like people would know them to say because they say them so frequently. What's are they high energy and like rapid fire, right? So they're going to be short, succinct, straightforward to the point, or do they tend to be reflective and introspective and take a while to get to where they want to go? They're going to stop for the story. They're going to stop for a little extra explanation. So it's really listening for their tone and their personality as much as like the actual details of what happened. And then studying. So, if I record a call and I go back and I listen to the call, I'm going to start to kind of like hear and develop that muscle memory of what they sound like. But you can also study the way that they write their own stuff. Inevitably the clients that I work with are coming to me either having their own businesses or at least their own personal profiles, right, on social media. And, they're sharing their own thoughts and ideas and perspectives in some manner, whether it's just personal opinion on whatever causes they care about, or it's like they're doing their marketing for their business. You can read the things that they're saying. And so now you're getting introduced to their worldview, you're getting introduced to their perspective, the way that they would explain something, comparisons or metaphors that they might actually naturally use to make a point. So you can study the way that they are in their own writing in order to try to learn some stuff about their voice.
Yeah, I love that because that seems to be a high priority for people writing books. They want it to sound like them, and not like it's, spit out by a computer.
Right. Yeah,
for sure. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I want to turn a little corner here because you have such a vast experience in your overachievedness. And I just made up that word, overachievedness.
I don't know. I like it. I think we should use that from now on.
I think so. So you worked with adults with persistent mental illness, the geriatric population in assisted living centers, and women in domestic abuse and rape shelters. So share more about your own experience and how it translated into showing compassion in your work.
So part of my personal story is that when I was growing up, the adults in my life didn't think that writing was practical. They did not think that that was going to be the thing that was going to eventually pay the bills and take care of myself and keep my lights on. So there was a lot of pressure to choose a different path that was going to be seen as more financially stable or lucrative. So people was something that I was always interested in. I had the chance to take this one elective in high school that was it was an introduction to psychology class, and I fell in love. I fell in love with the human brain and the mind and emotions and how complex we are as beings and what we think and we feel. And I thought, all right, well, I think I could be good at this. I know that I love writing and I'm good at writing, but like, I think this is this other thing that I could be really good at. So maybe that is the breadwinner and writing will be the thing that I do on the side. Right. So I went to undergrad. I did a double major. I was studying both psychology and creative writing at the same time. I got 2 bachelor's degrees. And a part of my undergraduate study for psychology meant that I needed to have internship experience. And part of my idea that I was going to go and eventually get a higher degree in psychology meant that I needed to get into grad school. So internship experience is going to be really important to get into grad school. And so I applied for these summer internships back home so that I could do them while I was home for the summer in between summer or spring and fall semester. And I wasn't expecting to get all of them, but they all gave me hours. And because I am an overachiever, I said yes to all of them. So one whole summer, I just bounced from these 3 different places, Monday to Friday. One day I was at mental health, the next day it was geriatric, the third day it was domestic violence or some combination, right? And oh my gosh, I just learned so much about people that summer. So much about people in all of the various shades and stages, right? I mean, because what the mentally ill or people suffering from mental illness, were experiencing was very different than what the people who are at the now I'm making up words, at the end stage of their life was obviously very different. And then of course, women coming into shelters, fleeing abusive homes, trying to protect their children. I mean, talk about looking at the underbelly of life, and figuring out how to remain joyful and optimistic and positive. And, that's the summer that I learned truly active listening. I mean, because most of the work in all of those settings was just that. People just wanted to be listened to. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to be seen, not just as what they were suffering from, but what they were capable of. And I didn't realize it right off how these experiences were going to help me later. I was like, well, this is really great experience to get into grad school. And I did get into grad school and I started a master's of fine arts. I didn't start that way. I started a master's of family therapy, marital and family therapy. I hated it. So I changed to my master's of fine arts in creative writing to pursue the thing I always felt called to do. But the psychology and the active listening always served me no matter where I went, right? Because you need to be a good people person no matter where you go. But when I went out on my own and I started to develop this business and landed where I ended up, that was when I started to make all of these connections and recognize that while following that psychology path might have felt at the time like it was a distraction or it was pulling me from what I was really called and meant to do, it has served me so greatly in the work I do now, because the people that I tend to work with are people who want to write memoir. And what we know about memoir is that this is not the happy shit. that people went through. Memoir is about the hardships and the trauma and the challenges and the adversity. And so I have needed all of that compassion and empathy and active listening and psychological tools and tips for self-care and, ability to give a virtual hug, because I'm not seeing any of these people in person, but ability to use my own words and my own personality to kind of enclose them and support, has all been really, really important to making them feel safe to tell their story, and then to either write it themselves or have me write it for them.
Yes, 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 and yes to all that, because you do need that. It can't, helping someone write a memoir is not a cookie cutter paint by number situation at all.
No.
You have to adapt to the person's, style, and you have to be really sensitive to how they retell their story, because some will get very emotional and some will just tell it like they're completely detached, and you need to relate to all that.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
Let's explore the fun side of Alyssa. You said that you've watched Princess Bride a few times, maybe thousands of times. So what do you love about that movie? And I have that movie as well, as far as, in addition to all those other shows that we mentioned. So what do you love about Princess Bride?
When I was younger, I appreciated kind of like the little bit of everything that it offered, right? It was like romance, but adventure. I think the grandfather really says it best, like in the beginning, it's sporting, it's fighting, it's true love. He's like trying to like pump it up for his grandson before he actually reads the book. And I think as a little girl, it was all that. It was exciting because it was so many things. As I got older, I recognized how hysterical it is. Just funny phrases, nonsensical comebacks, like strange, quirky characters, very dry sense of humor at times. And so it's really been the intellectual wit, I think, as I've gotten older, that I love. And it's so damn quotable. And I grew up quoting this movie with my little brother. We were like the kids who would like watch a movie once or twice and then like know it all by heart. And it was one of the movies where like I'd say a line and he would say the other character's line, and we would just go back and forth in these. So there's also a certain nostalgia, but I recognize now that when we were quoting it, we had no idea what any of it meant. Now I have so much more appreciation for it, because I'm like, oh, that's why this is hysterical. So I can't wait for my son to be old enough to actually share with him this movie, because I just think it's just one of the best. And I've got a game that's based off of the movie. I've got the book that oh shoot, the guy who played Wesley, I can't remember his actor name now, and just completely left me, but he wrote a book that was about the making of the movie. That's on my shelf. My brother bought me an anniversary edition of the book, like that Costco had randomly one year. Okay. It's up here, which is why I'm looking up here. And I've got the Funko Pops of the characters Wesley, Buttercup, Inigo Montoya, and the giant. And now that's blank. Now I'm blanking on that one too. Fezzik.
It's okay. So, I was
Yeah.
looking for, there's a thing that I have, and I don't want to do this while we're live, but there's like a business tips from Inigo Montoya. And have you seen that?
I think I have seen that.
Yeah, I'm Montoya. I'm going to kill, whatever that line is. And then it says, be to the point. And there's like 3 business points. And I keep it on my phone because it's so hysterical.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's good. I have a t-shirt that somebody got me. It's the script, but then the face of Inigo Montoya is whited out. So it's all of these words around his face, and it's just his face. It's just brilliant. Anything Princess Bride, and I would be like totally there.
Yeah, it's a brilliant movie, and it's a classic, and like you said, it's totally quotable. I still think of the quotes from that movie. So yeah, it's totally get that. Okay, so we've covered a lot in a short time.
We sure have. Yeah.
Yes. So how can people connect with you online if they want to get in touch with you and connect with you?
Yeah. So the two best ways are, one, to visit the website, therightplacerightTime.com. And that's WRITE in the first instance, and then RIGHT in the second. So right place, right time, two different spellings. But Michelle, I think you're going to put it in the notes. So come to the website, check all the things. If the pop-up appears, sign up for the emails. Would love to have you on the email list. And then other than that, my main stomping ground for social is LinkedIn. So people should come and connect with me, follow me. I would love to be connected to all sorts of fabulous people on LinkedIn. And right now, at least a couple times a month, I'm live with guests on Tuesdays. So, would love for people to check that out.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Any parting words that you want to tell viewers about if they're thinking about writing a book, if they're thinking about, putting their ideas onto paper? What is your best tip?
Yeah, main thing is, don't doubt that you have a story to tell. We all have one. We all have one. Finding what makes it relevant or finding what exactly it is completely doable, so long as you don't snuff out the idea that you actually have something important to say.
I love it. I love it. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for inviting me. This is so much fun.
It was. I appreciate that. And people can get in touch with you, and I will put all the information, your links and everything in the show notes, so people can get in touch with you. And, everybody knows I'm Michelle Hill, your legacy builder at Winning Proof. I'm a book and publishing consultant, and I put all the pieces together to write and publish your book so you don't have to. So you can find me on winningproof.com. And of course, like Alyssa said, LinkedIn is the secret sauce that connects serious business people. So you can find me on there too. So thank you. And thank you for watching another episode of Winning Proof Unscripted.